it out to our all-star panel tonight. Rejoining us is Carolyn Heldman. Also with us is radio host David Webb and Adam Geller, former consultant to New Jersey Governor Chris Christie. David, a lot in that, all those packages, those setups, and the discussion. What do you take away? That Romney ad, boy, was that effective for me. You too? No?
It's very effective. I'm a buy the numbers guy. Those are the facts. And to the president traveling to Philadelphia, that's just a core base for him in Philadelphia. The rest of the state, libertarian leaning and independents, they're the ones that are concerned. That's coal country in the West. Romney's going to hit him hard on the numbers. That's where he needs to stay. And by the numbers, this president has failed. Over $800 billion spent to deliver any kind of sustainable jobs in America. That's why unemployment is where it is. That's why people are now underemployed at an even higher rate. And it's even more hard felt in the lower income communities, no matter whether it's white, black, Asian, doesn't matter. It's hitting Americans who are going to feel it more in September.
And you know, Adam, just today, Vice President Biden, during a speech with organized labor, said, "We stand behind you, organized labor." I mean, are they missing the message?
Missing the message totally. And David is exactly right. At the end of the day, it's about numbers. It's 9.1% unemployment. It is just a miserable record the last couple of years. And here's what the left does, Eric, and we all know this, and we can predict it. It's going back, playing the blame game, talking about, well, this is what Obama inherited. At some point, guess what? Obama owns this economy. It's his, and it was his in the midterms. It'll be his in 2012.
Dr. Heldman, what about it? I think I remember Deborah Wasserman Schultz, the DNC chair, also a congresswoman, saying we own it. I remember Mr. Obama saying we own the economy. You want it on the left? You want it? Really? It's yours. Take it.
Well, Eric, I think that blaming President Obama for the economic downturn is like when it was really caused by the financial sector.
But Doc,
is really
honestly,
like
I got to cut
blaming
you
the
off.
sheriff.
I'm sorry to cut you off. No one said that. Everyone is saying it's yours now, but we're still faced with 14 million out of work, 25 million underemployed. We're still faced with home foreclosures off the deep end. The numbers, the prices are down. Nothing is working. At some point, you go, okay, let's try something different. But the left doesn't. For some reason, you all the left, all your pundits, but you all want to back him up and say it's Bush's fault. Enough already. Try something new.
No, I'm not saying it's Bush's fault. I'm saying it's the financial services sector's fault. They caused a liquidity crisis, which caused massive layoffs, a decline in demand, and until demand returns, nothing is going to move in this economy, and that is a corporate problem. And I wish that President Obama could solve it, and I agree that the economic stimulus was not as effective as it should have been. It should have been at least twice the size, less crony capitalism, but he can't control this, especially when companies are stockpiling historic amounts of money. They're making historic profits, and they're getting more out of the existing workers.
Wait, I'm confused. It may be my earpiece that's failing me. It sounded like you said the stimulus should have been twice as large.
That's correct.
So there should have been twice as much of a failure because the stimulus was an epic failure.
No, it was not an epic failure.
It was an epic failure. What job did it produce?
It saved or created over 1 million jobs, and it should have been twice as big because the hole was twice as big. Look at the CBO. Look at what came out of the White House. I'm not making these numbers up. It wasn't a total failure.
Here's the problem with this. This is the political calculus that failed. The hole, the ditch, the car, give it up. I mean, face it. The fact is that none of these jobs that were really saved or created had sustainability. They saved a lot of state jobs, a lot of union jobs, and when that funding ran out to the states, well, guess what? They laid them off, and that's what we saw in the beginning of this year. On top of that, instead of actually releasing funds in the U.S., $2 trillion sitting around, uncertainty of regulation, uncertainty of taxes, another trillion sitting offshore, because of our high corporate tax rate. The president, the Congress can affect this by changing the policies, and that's what they can do, but they cannot create wealth. The private sector, he has to let them work.
And Doc, one more thing, all the money, all the stimulus, QE1, QE2, stimulus, this, that, the other thing, $4 trillion in free money. There were no strings attached to that free money. There were a lot of banks that made a lot of money, a lot of corporate entities that made a lot of money, but certainly didn't create any jobs because they didn't attach it to a job creation program.
Right, so they just lined the pockets of Wall Street fat cats.
Yeah,
I understand that.
Absolutely, no, but they did, David. The reason why the stock market's 12,500 and there's 14 million people out of work is because exactly that. They put trillions of dollars into the economy without saying, hey, by the way, before we give you this money, you have to create jobs for it.
Yeah, no strings attached. I couldn't agree more. I mean, this is what's wrong with politics when you have even a Democratic president who is catering to Wall Street in this way, and there's no better evidence of that than the watered-down
Fantastic.
financial
As long
reform.
as you admit it goes both ways. You can point Bush at that
Absolutely.
for starting it, but Mr. Obama took the ball and really ran with it to the goal. I got to leave it there, guys. I'm sorry. Coming up, a plan to cut President Obama's and Vice President Biden's pay. You're watching the Fox Business Network, the power to prosper. All right, let's bring it out to the panel. Cutting D.C. paychecks 10% probably won't solve our budget crisis, but sure is a nice way to start, huh, Dave?
Yeah, it is on one end. Look, the symbolism that comes out of D.C., that's important. The freeze over the long term. Look, parity with the private sector, parity with the American people, these outrageous compensation packages they give not only federal employees, but the congressmen. I agree with that. That starts the ball rolling. Let them live a little like the American people they were elected to serve. Let me put on my Tea Party hat. Cut even more. Unless the American people grow and the economy grows for them, you stay where you are. Stop the profligate spending on yourself, your staffs, and beyond.
Mr. Adam.
You want to get my attention? How about cut some pensions? How about cut some of those cushy health care benefits? Now you're going to get my attention because right now, like David said, it's symbolism. You really want to get you want to capture the imagination? Go after the pensions, go after the health care benefits, go after all those other cushy, forever types of benefits that these guys get.
Finally, Doc, we found one that you can agree with the right on this one, right? Cut Congress and President 10%.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. President Obama makes $400,000 a year. What would be really symbolic is if the financial services CEOs who make an average of $6.7 million a year would take a pay cut.
Big
or,
difference,
CEOs,
Doc. Private
no, it's not a
sector
big-
versus public sector.
Well, let her
Well,
finish. Let her
don't
finish.
talk about overcompensation then. If you're going to talk about overcompensation, we have to look at the fact that CEOs on average make 343 times what their
From
average
what, Doc,
workers
though?
make.
From what? What are they paid with? They're paid with profit, right?
They are paid with profit, and it's obviously exorbitant if you have 343 times the average amount of your workers. Okay,
but the
that
president,
is ridiculous.
vice
The
president,
president's
and the
not
other
paid a lot of-
the president, vice president, the other 2.1 million workers on the federal payroll are paid with what? Not profit, but
Our money.
taxpayer
We're
dollars.
paying them.
Yeah,
I
it's big
want
deal.
them to
let-
be compensated well. I
let me-
want
let
them
me
to be
simplify
compensated
it.
commensurate with their jobs.
Let
Go
me
ahead, Dave.
simplify it, Doc. You know I love you, Catherine, but I'll tell you what. Let's live by the courage of your conviction. Let's take everything you don't need to live by this same model and this same principle and give it away to somebody because you're probably being paid too much or more than somebody else. My point
know, if
is
we
this.
wanna get personal about this, I'm
no,
a
not
minimalist.
personal.
I already do that.
The principle is private sector dollars. You earn it. You become a professor. You have a good reputation. They're going to pay you what you're worth and hopefully a little more. You deserve that. But our taxpayer dollars should be treated differently.
Go ahead, jump
And
here,
by
Adam.
the way, again, you let the market decide, okay? If these guys aren't earning their money, they're going to hear it from their shareholders, they're going to hear it from their board, they're going to be out of a job. And most
I
importantly,
wish.
the point is they're not being paid by me or you or David or Eric. They're being paid privately.
Doc, why is it over the last 2.5, almost 3 years, 2.5 years or so, the federal workforce is up 180,000?
Because
in
of the
same
stimulus
period of time, hold on.
package.
In the same period of time, the economy has lost 3 million jobs. Why? They're going in opposite directions.
Right, because the public sector has been hiring in an attempt to stimulate the economy, and the private sector has been hoarding cash and getting more productivity out of its existing
hang on a
workers.
second. This makes no sense what you just said. They are hiring in an attempt to stimulate the economy. In order to pay a federal worker, give them a pension and benefit or any kind of level, you have to take money out of the economy.
That's not true. We
Yes, it
create
is.
it. The
You
Fed
take
creates
money
it.
out of revenues
That's not-
collected by the government.
Absolutely
That's a
not.
fact
Go
to
ahead, Doc.
pay them.
They're public employees.
Hold on. Go ahead, Doc.
Quantitative easing one, quantitative easing two. No, we create money, we inject more money into the market. It doesn't take it out of the private sector. In fact, the private sector, the ability to stockpile money right now is really what's the issue here. And the fact that it's profit driven instead of in the public interest driven. I wish that corporations
We were
could look
built
at
on
this and say,
profit
we need to
driven,
get
Doc.
out.
America was built and founded on capitalism and free markets. That's the way our economy has always worked. Let's not change it now. We're going to have to leave it right there. Coming up next. Okay, panel. David, green or black gold?
You know what? Tyson is so wrong. It's not even funny. It's actually sad. Because, one, nuclear energy is clean energy. We reuse spent fuel. We reuse it. We continue to use it to a point where we have safe storage, which exists. It is the permitting process when it comes to nuclear. They're sitting on a plant right now out in Iowa that they want to get up. But since Japan, the legislators shut it down. On top of that, the cost of producing energy. When we produce it here, we're not shipping it across the oceans on tankers, which means we reduce that cost. The carbon argument, completely false. Clean coal technology works, and the cost per kilowatt,
Doc,
that's where it comes home.
Let me guess, you're on board with Mr. Slocum on this one. Let's turn it all over to the windmills and the solar panels.
Well, yes, ideally, I would like to move to renewable energy versus non-renewable energy because that is a long-term solution. But I would break with him on nuclear. I actually think I break with a lot of the left on this. It is a fine way to go if we have new generation technology and implement it. And that's not what's happening in Iowa. We shouldn't be building any of these older technological nuclear power plants. And we do have an issue with the spent rods. There is no place, nothing to do with that except to store them, and they are radioactive. And that is one of the downsides.
France is one of the most liberal places on the planet, and they get 80% of their power from nuclear. I think there's going to be a way to figure this out to make liberals and tree huggers happy. Go ahead, Adam.
I mean, from a political standpoint, now I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second. As a political pollster, I'm going to tell you that the political viability of nuclear power is not what it was after the Japanese tragedy. So I have to tell you that for a generation, for the next 10, 15 or more years, public opinion is just not going to be behind nuclear energy. In the meantime, there are plenty of natural resources.
What happens this summer if you open up your power bill and it's double what it was last year, which it likely could
Absolutely.
be, or triple next year? At some point, you go, okay,
increase supply.
I'm going to get over this NIMBY thing, and
increase supply.
I'll take it.
Natural gas, start drilling off our waters. There's plenty of natural resources, as you said. We don't have to go nuclear. We have to
I think we do.
First of all, just like the plant in Iowa that was literally shelved by the state legislature for no real reason right after Fukushima happened. But let's use Tyler's own words, immature technology. If the technology is immature, then you don't try to push it out on the market. You don't put a car out on the market before it's properly tested. You don't put a computer on the market before it's properly tested.
He didn't say premature.
So,
he said
immature. He said immature.
He didn't say premature. You can put immature. You can put new technology on the market.
He said immature technology. Let's use L.A. for a perfect example. They put $500 million into solar tech for their schools. It failed miserably. Sure. $500 million down the drain because of immature technology.
Let me ask you, look, you know economics. Why not let the private sector do this at their own expense? And when it's ready, when it's not immature anymore, when it's an adolescent, bring it to the public and say, look, we've developed it at our own expense. It's going to cost you. You're going to pay for it. But why does the government have to make this immature energy source mature?
Because the private sector will run on short-sightedness. They have lobbyists that have kept oil and cars on the road, gasoline guzzling cars. I remember back in 1990, we were talking about climate change, and we were talking about what you're now calling immature technology. I think that's a miscommunication there. He means early technology. And it's been 20 years, and the private sector has done almost nothing. And the only things that they have done have been motivated by the public sector.
How did the internet work out? Worked out pretty well. Right, there are a lot of companies, a lot of industries that sprouted from that, a lot of sectors that sprouted. That wasn't government funded and run.
Are you kidding? If you want to look at how that technology was developed, that was almost exclusively government funded.
I forgot Al Gore was responsible for the internet.
You know what? First
the
of all,
government did fund its development. It absolutely did.
First of all, yes, the initial money to start the development of the internet happened, but you know who did it? Peekskill and Poughkeepsie, IBM, and a few other people in the private sector who took that initial technology and ran with it.
And sold it.
And so on top of that, till you find me a car that can run on a windmill or a solar panel, not going to happen. Chevy Volt. The Chevy Volt, which they sold 1,400 in February.
How about the EV1s that they pulled off the market because they weren't making enough money off of repairs on them?
Okay,
how about that? That's an industry cover-up.
Actually, former Secretary of the Navy, John Lehman, was brought in by the president to shit on the Electric Car Council that he created a month ago. And you know what they discovered out of this so far?
He said, sit, you guys. He said,
he said, what they found out of that so far, Eric, and I had dinner with the secretary a couple of weeks ago, not much.
Yeah.
It's not enough to change our energy profile.
And clearly, the Chevy Volt selling, they're expecting to sell 10,000 Chevy Volts, and as David points out, just a handful. Guys, I got to leave it there. Who's next? American people? Someone's next. All right, by its own admission, Media Matters is in the business to hurt Fox News and any other group that doesn't follow their strictly liberal views. Why the heck is the federal government subsidizing Media Matters, and why has this story gotten so little media attention? I'm going to bring it out to you, David. It's 501c3 is for religious organizations and educational organizations. This sounds like a bitter attack against one group.
Keyword in there, and keywords are non-political activities. Now, what Media Matters did was smart. When they filed their 1023, that 30-page form, they filed properly. Then they went against what they said in their filing. That's a clear violation of their status. On top of that, they have been clear, even in that, we're out to get you. Think if Fox said to the New York Times, we're out to get you, what they would do. It would be a violation. So it's not just, it's a clear violation. They should lose that status.
All right, Doc, I'm going to give it to you in a second, but I want to read something. This is David Brock is the founder of Media Matters. He gave an interview to Politico. I'm going to read some of these things that came out of that interview. David Brock described in an interview as an all-out campaign of, quote, guerrilla warfare and sabotage aimed at the Fox News channel. That's one of them. One more quick one here. It said the group, he said the group will focus on News Corp CEO Rupert Murdoch and trying to disrupt his commercial interests. That alone, that doesn't sound like educational to me, Doc.
Well, Eric, it sounds like you are admitting that Fox News is a political entity. But even in your admission of that,
wait. Time out. I'm reading excerpts from an interview that David Brock gave to Politico.
And if you're saying that Media Matters is political because they're going after Fox News, then you are admitting that Fox News is a political entity. But
Doc,
even then, it doesn't
that makes no
violate 501c3.
sense.
Of course it does.
You're telling me
it's
that
just
his
going after a
words
news
apply
organization.
to Fox. Nobody's buying that one, Doc. Come on. Let's just face it. If
Buying
Fox
what?
did the same
argument.
thing, look, if Fox did the same thing, they'd be wrong in that position,
They
no
don't
matter
get
what name you
tax-exempt
put on
status.
it.
By the way,
Fox
I would
is
also
a
point
for-profit
out
company. They don't get tax-exempt status. And by the way, they're not in violation of any law unless they support or oppose a candidate.
And they
Now,
have
Fox
done
News
that.
could
And
never
they
be
have
a
done
Fox
candidate.
News is not a 501c3, number one.
Right.
When you file as a 501c3, according to federal law, you cannot expressly advocate for or against any type of organization, period. It's educational purposes.
No, that is not true.
You can't
just
advocate.
can't get involved in politics. So you are all admitting that
You
Fox
cannot
is a
politicize
political
a
entity.
501c3
Thank you
organization.
for admitting that.
Okay, you know what? I just, at this point, I don't have circular arguments. Here's the reality. Media Matters was smart. They filed the 1023. They violated the tax status. They should be brought up on
How
it.
did they
There are a
violate
number
the
of
tax status?
organizations.
Please tell me how they violated their tax status.
Doc, you cannot engage in political activity. They have done that not just with Fox, but with political
No,
candidates.
it's actually not even
All right,
political
guys.
activity. It's a political candidate.
All right, guys, we're gonna have to leave it there. Under the category of you can't make this stuff up, according to Harvard University, taking your kids to 4th of July celebrations makes them more likely to become young Republicans. It begs two questions. Number one, why is Harvard studying 4th of July parades? And number two, can we celebrate 4th of July every day? Doc, based on your responses tonight, I take it you don't spend much time watching 4th of July parades.
Well, Eric, you know, what's great about this study, and I do think they should have done it, is that they also found that attending 4th of July parades increases political participation, which was the focal point of the study. And it does have a 2% effect. It makes you 2% more likely to support Republicans and 4% more likely to vote for them. I think it takes all types, Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, Independents, and the fact that it increases political participation means that everyone should be taking their kids to 4th of July parades.
You see, now I think it means you go to a 4th of July parade, you can become more patriotic, and clearly the more patriotic of the two are the Republicans. Dave, what do you think of that?
Well, you know, I think basically, as I sit here wrapped in my American flag.
There you go.
I was taken to a lot of 4th of July parades. I waved the flag. I still bring the flag to my veteran father's grave on every Memorial Day, July 4th birthday, and other days of the year. Bottom line on this, I'm glad they did this. Hey, let's find out that kids who have pride in our country, jingoistic feelings, wave the flag, say, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Wow.
Amen. Go ahead.
Okay, so the reality is this study was a study of weather, and it was particularly rainfall during the 4th of July. When it's sunny, there are parades. When it rains, there aren't parades. My conclusion, Sunshine makes people Republicans.
Oh, there you go.
makes them
Sunshine is just
patriotic,
4th of July.
baby.
Go ahead, Doc. About 30 seconds or so.
That wasn't the focus of the study. That
It
was the
was. That's the-
methodology.
it's
No,
in the
that was the
article.
methodology.
Google it.
There's a difference between the focus and the methodology. I actually read the study, and as an academic, I could interpret it and know what it meant. And so that was the method. It was not actually the study itself. That was just the way they determined attendance at these
It's all about
parades.
the
Do me a
Sunshine, Doc.
favor. Spend 4th of July, watch a whole bunch of parades, come back, we'll bring you back, we'll
See
put
what
you on the
happens.
conservative side of the panel. That's
Yeah.
it. Follow the money. Have a great 4th of July weekend. That's David Webb. That's Adam Yeller. And that up there is Dr. Carolyn Hellman. Thank you so much, guys. Happy 4th of July.